Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Ah, yes.
And this time we're going to be looking at how Hinduism has not only survived, but thrived for literally thousands of years.
That's right.
So we have some really fantastic source material that kind of walks us through the major movements that reshaped how people understand and practice this ancient faith. So are you ready to go on this journey with me and uncover
absolutely.
the secrets of Hinduism's lasting appeal?
I think one of the things that's so fascinating about Hinduism is this ability to embrace change and to hold on to its core principles simultaneously.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
It is.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
So we're talking early Vedic Hinduism.
Right.
We're talking like thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago, that's right.
It was all about elaborate rituals. It was like a spectacle, right?
It was a spectacle. It was a way to maintain this cosmic order, and it was really, really important that it was done exactly right according to the Vedas.
Okay, so that makes sense that this was a spectacle.
Yes.
But then at some point, things start to shift.
Yes.
From outward rituals to a more...
an inward focus.
Inward focus.
Absolutely.
How did that happen?
Well, you know, if you imagine yourself year after year participating in these elaborate ceremonies and rituals, at some point you might start to think, what's the point of all this? What's the deeper meaning behind all this? And I think that's what happened. People started searching for a more personal meaning and a more direct experience with the divine.
Yeah, it's like they were craving something more than just going through the motions.
Yes, exactly. And that's where the Upanishads come in.
Right.
These texts encouraged people to look within to really contemplate the nature of Brahman, which is the ultimate reality, the source of everything. It also encouraged people to look at the Atman, the self, and how that connected with Brahman.
So instead of just performing rituals, you're reflecting on your place in the universe, your relationship to the divine. And so this inward focus, paved the way. I mean, I know that Advaita Vedanta explores this idea of oneness between the individual self and Brahman.
Absolutely. Advaita Vedanta argues that this separation we perceive between ourselves and the divine is an illusion. And the shift from the external to the internal is really one of the most important transformations in Hinduism.
Yeah. It's fascinating to see how this ancient idea of looking inward is still so relevant today.
It is.
I mean, you think about the popularity of mindfulness, the popularity of meditation. People are searching for that same sense of inner peace and connection.
It's a universal human longing, wouldn't you say?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, though, I mean, how did this shift from those grand rituals to personal exploration affect the average person?
Well, that's a good question.
Was everybody suddenly meditating in caves?
Not quite.
Okay.
It happened gradually over time, and there were different approaches that all kind of coexisted.
Okay.
But the emphasis on the individual experience opened the door for this really powerful new movement that would change the face of Hinduism, the bhakti movement.
Now, I've heard of bhakti,
Okay.
but I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about it.
Okay, well, imagine a movement that really swept across India, that emphasized passionate devotion to a chosen deity above all else. It transcended social hierarchies and really allowed people from all walks of life to connect with the divine directly through song, dance, poetry, and really heartfelt prayer.
That sounds fascinating.
It's an incredible movement.
So was this movement like a reaction to the formality and complexity of the rituals?
It was a response to that perceived elitism and that rigidity of the Vedic tradition. Bhakti saints, poets, and musicians emerged from all corners of society, and they really challenged the authority of the Brahmin priests and emphasized a very personal, emotional connection with the divine.
So instead of relying on priests to interpret scriptures or perform rituals, people could now connect with God directly through their own devotion.
Their own devotion.
That's quite a shift in power dynamics, isn't it?
It is a huge shift in power dynamics. It really made spirituality accessible to everyone, regardless of their caste or their social status.
Regardless of anything.
Exactly.
So like Kabir,
a weaver,
who rejected both Hinduism and Islam, proclaiming that true devotion transcended religious boundaries.
Yes.
Or Mirabai.
Mirabai, a Rajput princess who abandoned her royal life to sing and dance in ecstatic devotion to Krishna.
Okay, so these bhakti saints were really trailblazers.
They were.
I can see why this movement had such a lasting impact on Hinduism.
Right.
But how exactly do they empower individuals?
Well, I think one of the crucial factors is their use of vernacular language.
Right.
They weren't using Sanskrit, which was primarily accessible to the elite. They were using the languages spoken by the common people.
Right.
And so it made their message of love and devotion
Right.
instantly relatable and accessible.
It's like creating a spiritual revolution using the power of language and music.
Exactly. And it reached a much wider audience.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's an incredible story.
Are there any specific examples of how this played out in society?
There are tons of examples.
Yeah.
The one that comes to mind is the idea that bhakti poetry and
Okay.
songs spread through traveling minstrels and singers.
Okay.
They were going from village to village, carrying these powerful messages of love, equality,
Right.
and really the importance of personal experience.
Right.
So they weren't just entertaining people.
Yeah.
They were transforming their understanding of spirituality.
It's like creating these pop-up spiritual gatherings.
Yeah,
Spreading their message through word of mouth.
that's right.
Yeah. So this personal, accessible approach to spirituality must have been incredibly appealing,
It was.
especially compared to the more formal,
Yeah,
ritualistic practices
it was very appealing.
at the time.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about individual enlightenment.
Right.
The bhakti movement had profound social implications.
Okay, how so?
Well, it challenged the caste system,
Okay.
arguing that all souls were equal in the eyes of God.
So they were tapping into that universal human desire for connection
Exactly.
and meaning, but they were also using it to challenge social norms
Yes.
and promote a more inclusive vision
Absolutely.
of spirituality.
Yes.
So this one movement had this huge ripple effect
It did.
throughout Hindu society.
Yes, it did.
And it makes me think
Yeah.
about this emphasis on personal experience,
Yeah.
connecting with the divine
Yeah.
through your own heart and emotions.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be this recurring theme
It does.
in Hinduism's evolution.
It does.
Do we see that in later movements as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I think that's a great segue into
Yep.
our next topic,
Yeah.
which is the rise of Tantra in Shaktism,
Okay.
where the focus shifts to the divine feminine.
Mhm.
Are you ready to explore that side of Hinduism's evolution?
Let's go.
All right,
I'm ready.
let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so we've talked about the shift from elaborate rituals
Yes.
to personal exploration and the rise of bhakti,
Right.
which really democratized spirituality.
Yes.
But now we're getting into Tantra and
Yes.
Shaktism,
Yes.
which focus on the divine feminine.
That's right.
This feels like a pretty big departure from
It is.
what we've discussed so far.
Yeah, it is a big shift. So you see Tantra and Shaktism really challenge these traditional patriarchal structures
Okay.
by putting Shakti, the goddess, front and center.
Okay.
She is the ultimate power, the source of creation,
Right.
the energy in the universe.
So instead of the divine being seen primarily as male,
Right.
these movements are presenting a female deity
Yes.
as the supreme force.
Absolutely.
That's pretty revolutionary
It is.
for a religion that's thousands of years old.
Absolutely. And it really shifted the understanding of the divine.
Right.
Shaktism in particular provided a framework for understanding
Yeah.
and honoring female energy.
Okay.
Not just in the cosmos, but within ourselves as well.
Right.
And it offered a space for female leadership and spiritual practice that challenged those existing power dynamics.
So I have to admit, whenever I hear the word Tantra,
Yeah.
my mind goes
Wow.
to somewhat sensationalized portrayals in
Sure.
popular culture.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate representation?
Not quite. Tantra is so complex. And to be honest, it's often misunderstood.
Right.
It really encompasses a variety of different schools and practices. Some focus on rituals, some focus on yoga and meditation, some on philosophical concepts.
Okay.
And yes, some tantric traditions do explore sexuality as a path to spiritual awakening,
Right.
but it's not about what you might see in movies.
Okay, so it's much more nuanced and
Yes.
multifaceted
Much more.
than those popular portrayals suggest.
Right,
But it makes sense that a movement challenging traditional norms
right.
might be met with some resistance or misinterpretations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's really important to remember
Okay.
is that both Tantra and Shaktism offered a new way of understanding the divine and our relationship to it. They acknowledged and celebrated the power of feminine energy, which had been largely overlooked or suppressed in many spiritual traditions.
This kind of reminds me of some of the conversations happening today.
Yes.
About the divine feminine and reclaiming female power. It's like these ancient movements were ahead of their time in recognizing and honoring,
I think so too,
that aspect of spirituality.
Yes, they were. And it wasn't just theoretical. These movements had practical implications for the lives of women.
Like what?
For example, some Shaktism traditions have female gurus and priests, which was practically unheard of in other branches of Hinduism.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
So it sounds like these movements provided a space for women to step to leadership roles within a religious context.
Yes.
That must have been quite a radical shift.
It was.
So did this empowerment of women translate into changes in broader society?
It's difficult to say for sure, but there's no doubt that Tantra and Shaktism influenced how people viewed gender roles and the power of the feminine. The very fact that these movements existed challenged the status quo and offered a different lens through which to see the world.
So even if we can't draw a direct line from these movements to specific social reforms, their presence and influence must have had some impact.
It did.
On the way people thought about gender and power.
It did.
And it's fascinating to see how these ancient practices still resonate with conversations happening today.
They do. It's fascinating.
It's like these movements planted seeds that continue to grow and blossom throughout history.
That's a good way to put it.
Influencing everything from art and literature to social movements and personal spiritual practices. It makes me wonder, how did these ideas about the divine feminine play out in the development of Hindu iconography and mythology?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because I imagine there must be some powerful female deities who embody these concepts.
There are, think of goddesses like Durga, the warrior goddess, who slays demons. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity, and Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and the arts. These are just a few examples of the many powerful female deities who populate the Hindu pantheon.
And their stories and imagery offer a rich tapestry of feminine archetypes.
Yes, they do.
Each embodying different aspects of Shakti.
Exactly.
It's incredible how these goddesses represent such a diverse range of qualities, from strength and wisdom to beauty and compassion. It's a far cry from the one-dimensional portrayals of women that we often see in other religious traditions.
It is.
And these goddesses aren't just distant figures to be worshipped. They're seen as active forces in the world, intervening in human affairs, guiding devotees, offering protection and blessings. I'm struck by the sense of agency and power these goddesses embody. It feels like a real celebration of feminine strength and potential.
It is, exactly. And that's a key element of Shaktism. It's about recognizing and honoring the divine feminine. Not just as a concept, but as a lived reality. This reverence for feminine energy is woven into the very fabric of Hindu thought and practice.
So we've seen how Hinduism has evolved from elaborate rituals to personal contemplation, embraced personal devotion through bhakti, and celebrated the divine feminine through Tantra and Shaktism. As we move closer to the modern era, I'm curious how Hinduism grappled with the challenges and opportunities of colonialism and the encounter with Western thought. Did this lead to further transformations?
It did, and that's where we see the emergence of reformers like Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi.
Those are names that carry a lot of weight even today.
They do.
They're almost like household names.
They are.
At least for those familiar with Indian history and philosophy. Their impact on Hinduism is undeniable.
It is. They emphasize that true spirituality
couldn't be separated from social responsibility. They reinterpreted ancient scriptures to highlight messages of equality, compassion, and service.
So essentially, they were redefining what it meant to be a Hindu. In a rapidly changing world.
In a rapidly changing world.
And it sounds like they were trying to bridge that gap between tradition and modernity. Finding ways to make ancient wisdom relevant to the challenges of their time. Did they face any resistance?
Oh, there were definitely tensions and debates.
Yeah.
But what's remarkable is how they managed to reinterpret those ancient texts.
Okay.
Like the Vedas and Upanishads.
Right.
In a way that resonated with both traditionalists and those seeking a more progressive and socially engaged form of Hinduism.
So instead of clinging to rigid interpretations, they were willing to re-examine and reinterpret those core texts to find meaning and guidance for the present moment. For the present moment, that's right.
So Vivekananda, for instance, played a pivotal role in presenting Hinduism as a universal and tolerant religion.
That's right.
At the 1893 Parliament of World Religions in Chicago.
It's a huge moment.
His message of unity and acceptance challenged preconceived notions about Hinduism and introduced its wisdom to a global audience.
To a global audience.
So this is a landmark moment.
It is.
It really marks Hinduism's entry onto the world stage.
Absolutely.
It was no longer confined to the Indian subcontinent.
That's right.
It was becoming a global faith.
Exactly.
And then you have Gandhi, who with his emphasis on nonviolence and the dignity of labor, further challenged social inequalities within India.
Yes.
He called for a Hinduism that transcended caste divisions and embraced all communities.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring to see how these reformers use their faith as a catalyst for positive change, both within India and on a global scale.
Yes. They understood that spirituality isn't something that's confined to temples and ashrams.
Yeah.
It's about how we live our lives, how we treat others, and how we engage with the world around us.
Yeah, it's like they were taking those ancient principles of dharma or moral duty and applying them to the complexities of modern life.
Yes.
Which makes me think about how the concept of dharma itself might have evolved.
That's a great question.
Over time.
Yeah, dharma is a complex concept that is really central to Hindu philosophy and ethics. It's often translated as duty, righteousness, or moral order.
Right.
But it's so much more nuanced than that.
So it's not just about following a set of rules.
Not just about following rules. No.
Or commandments.
No, it's really about living in alignment with your true nature and fulfilling your purpose in life.
Okay.
It's about acting in a way that upholds cosmic order and contributes to the well-being of all beings.
So those specific duties and responsibilities associated with dharma can vary.
They can vary.
Depending on someone's stage of life.
Absolutely.
Social status. And even the specific time and place in which they live.
It changes and shifts depending on context.
So it's not a static concept.
Not at all.
It's something that's constantly evolving and being reinterpreted.
Exactly.
Based on individual circumstances. And the needs of the time.
The needs of the time.
It's a constant process of self-reflection and alignment.
I like that.
Trying to find that sweet spot where our individual actions contribute to a harmonious and ethical way of life.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another fascinating chapter.
Okay.
In Hinduism's evolution, the global spread of yoga and meditation.
Ah, yes, the practices that have taken the world by storm.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think that these ancient techniques rooted in Hindu tradition have become such a global phenomenon.
A global phenomenon.
But before we delve into that, I think it's important to take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered so far.
Yes.
From ancient rituals to the rise of the divine feminine and the call for social justice.
Right.
It's been quite a journey.
It has been quite a journey.
What's standing out to you most? And how do you see these transformative movements shaping Hinduism as we know it today?
That's a great question.
Take a moment to consider these questions as we continue our exploration of this ever-evolving faith.
So, thinking about yoga and meditation, once primarily associated with Hindu ashrams and temples, are now found in studios and gyms all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
It is.
When you think about it, from ancient spiritual practices to a global fitness trend.
It is.
What led to this widespread adoption?
Well, a big part of it has to do with figures like Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Sivananda, and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. They brought these practices to the West in the 20th century, presenting them as techniques for self-discovery and spiritual growth, regardless of one's religious background.
So they kind of stripped away some of those religious connotations and presented these practices as tools for personal well-being.
Exactly.
Which makes sense considering how yoga and meditation have become so integrated into our modern wellness culture.
Exactly. And it's fascinating to see how different aspects of these practices have resonated with Western audiences. So Hatha yoga, with its focus on physical postures and breath control, has become incredibly popular for its physical and mental benefits. And then you have transcendental meditation, which offers a technique for quieting the mind and reducing stress.
It's probably safe to say that most of us have at least tried
I would say so.
yoga or meditation at some point. It's become so mainstream.
It has.
But has this global popularity come at a cost?
That's a good question.
I imagine there are concerns about these practices being commercialized or losing their original spiritual context.
You're absolutely right. There's a real tension there. On the one hand, it's wonderful that these practices are accessible to so many people, but on the other hand, there's the risk of them being stripped of their deeper meaning and turned into just another commodity.
It's like that age-old debate about cultural appropriation.
Exactly.
How do you honor the roots of a tradition while also allowing it to evolve and adapt to new contexts?
It's a complex issue, and there are no easy answers. But I think it's important to approach these practices with respect and a willingness to learn about their origins. It's also crucial to recognize that there are many different lineages and interpretations of yoga and meditation within Hinduism itself.
So it's not a monolithic thing.
No.
There's diversity within the tradition itself.
Absolutely.
It's like saying all of Western philosophy is just about Plato. Or all of Christianity is just about the Gospels. There's so much more nuance and complexity to these traditions than a quick glance might reveal.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind as we consider Hinduism's future. It's a faith that has always been incredibly adaptable and diverse. But now it's facing the challenges and opportunities of a truly globalized world.
That's right.
What does it look like for a religion that's thousands of years old, but still so dynamic?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And, you know, I think our source materials seem to suggest that Hinduism's inherent diversity and inclusivity are its greatest strengths.
I think so.
It embraces multiple paths to spirituality. Devotion, meditation, philosophical inquiry, selfless service. Which allows it to resonate with a wide range of individuals.
That's one of the things that makes Hinduism so unique. It's not a one-size-fits-all religion.
It's more like this vast network of interconnected paths, all leading toward the same ultimate goal of liberation and self-realization.
It's like a spiritual choose-your-own-adventure.
I like that.
You can find a path that resonates with your own temperament and inclinations.
Exactly.
And that probably explains why it continues to attract new followers. Even in an increasingly secular world. I mean, people are hungry for meaning and connection.
They are.
But they don't necessarily want to be confined by rigid doctrines or dogmas.
Exactly. Hinduism offers a framework for spiritual exploration that's both ancient and incredibly relevant to the challenges of modern life. It speaks to that deep human longing for connection, meaning, and transcendence, but it does so in a way that honors individual choice and experience.
It's like that quote from the Rigveda.
Yes.
Truth is one. Sages call it by various names.
Yes.
Hinduism embodies that principle so beautifully.
It recognizes that there are many different ways to approach the divine, and it celebrates that diversity.
Absolutely. And the source material also highlighted the importance of finding that balance between preserving traditional values and embracing modern interpretations. It's a delicate dance. But it's essential for Hinduism to continue to thrive in a rapidly changing world.
It's like tending a garden.
Yes.
You want to nurture the existing plants and honor the wisdom of generations past.
Yes.
But you also want to create space for new seeds to sprout and flourish.
That's a beautiful analogy. And I think it captures the essence of Hinduism's future. It's a living tradition that continues to evolve and adapt, offering ancient wisdom and practical guidance for navigating the complexities of modern life. It reminds us that spirituality is not a static destination, but an ongoing journey of growth, transformation, and self-discovery.
What a profound insight to end on.
I think so.
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
Exploring the never-evolving tapestry of Hinduism.
Thank you for having me.
For our listeners who are eager to explore further, we highly recommend checking out the resources mentioned in our show notes. But before we sign off, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
In our rapidly changing world where ancient traditions often intersect with modern values, what role does spirituality play in your life? How can we draw wisdom from the past to create a more meaningful and fulfilling present?
Good question.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.
Yes.
Keep questioning.
Keep learning.
And keep diving deeper into the mysteries of the world around us.